Hello, everyone, and welcome to another collab. This time around, I have a gentleman by the name of Chris from a fairly new YouTube channel called The Watch Lounge. Now, Chris reached out to me a couple of weeks back, and I basically talked to him on the phone for a few minutes, and I found that Chris actually has a very interesting story. He originally reached out to me to see if I wanted to join one of his live feeds, but when I got deeper into his story and how he got to where he is today, I felt like it was worth dedicating an episode just between me and him to talk about his story. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess the very first question that anybody's going to want to know is who's this Chris character and why is he in the watch space? Tell me how you first got into watches.
Basically, I've been into watches almost my whole life, high school. And of course, I've always been into cars. Of course, cars and watches kind of correlate. Collecting since high school, I started off with the same old Fossil, Seiko, Citizen, stuff that your kid on a budget basically starts out with. And then I didn't really start getting more into watches recently until it's been about 8-9 years ago. And I started getting into more recently, and I picked up my first, I guess you could say, real watch. It was the Seiko Orange Monster. I still actually do have that watch here. I don't know if you, nothing too crazy, but sentimental reasons, of course, I keep it. So that's one that won't go anywhere.
I mean, that's awesome because I've told you guys numerous times about collecting, and I do get a lot of comments on my channel too, Chris, that people say, well, you show these crazy $200,000-$300,000 watches, that's way out of my league. I have a Seiko, I have a Citizen, and I always tell people that's completely irrelevant. It doesn't really matter because the love for watches is not dependent on a price tag. I've always said that. So obviously that Seiko is super special too because that's your first real watch, right? I didn't even have that, when I was coming up. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. And my first real watch was a Rolex that a buddy of mine out of Atlantic City brought up to me for $1,000, and I was so happy about that watch. That was my first real watch. But again, it's irrelevant how much something is, as far as I'm concerned. It's really about the love of watches. So, what was that first turning point that got you serious about collecting?
Well, basically, it started off kind of bad, I guess, like a couple things all happened at once and stuff was kind of going bad personally, I guess. And of course, as I mentioned to you, we found out that mom had cancer. So we found that out, but she's luckily a survivor. So that, we lucked out there, but, we found that out. And then I was dealing with some other personal stuff with a female, of course, but I'm not going to get into details into all that, but everything was just happening all at once. And I just needed kind of something to, I guess, clear my mind. And watches were kind of an escapism, and they've helped, through the researching different brands, finding out what I like, what I don't like, kept my mind occupied, I guess you could say, instead of going down a bad path.
I can certainly relate to that. I've gone through a major life change with my older sister who passed away at the age of 49 from cancer. I can relate to what you're saying in regards to trying to keep your mind occupied. It's very easy to reach for a bottle of Jack Daniels. You know what I mean? It's very easy to use what's happening in your life that's bad at the moment as an excuse for doing bad shit, so to speak, right? Whatever it might be it drugs, alcohol, partying, whatever it might be in a negative way. But your take on it was, you know what, I'm going to occupy my brain by learning more about this craft of watches, which is something I've been passionate about since high school, to sort of bring it forward. And this is probably the biggest reason why I brought you on the show after you told me your story, is because it's this very concept of watch collecting and loving doesn't necessarily translate into dollars, right? You don't necessarily have to get out there and spend 5, 10, 20, 30, because, sky is the limit. There's zero limit on how much you can spend on watches. There's always that bigger, more expensive, better watch. But to be able to consider your passion from a knowledge perspective first and foremost, rather than from the material perspective of what you have on your wrist, I think that was pretty impressive to me in either case, right? You decided to open up a YouTube channel. What was the main reasoning behind opening up the YouTube channel?
Well, basically, I was in the Facebook groups, and a lot of people might know me from the Facebook groups, like all the different watch forums. I was a moderator on a couple different forums, and I started networking with people, and I met through that. I had ended up meeting a couple, not actually in person, but online, meeting a couple of different YouTubers, and a couple of the people that actually had inspired me to start my channel way back when was Bruce Williams. I'm sure you're familiar with him, and Random Rob. I'm sure you probably heard of him. They've both been really influential in helping me out with my channel.
Some random guy named Rob, huh? Random Rob.
Yeah.
So you start to moderate these groups. Now, what happens when you're a moderator of a group on Facebook, right? People tend to look up to you. All while you weren't the biggest collector. You didn't have a humongous watch portfolio. You know what I mean? Look, you're a hard blue-collar working guy, but yet you managed to demand the respect from your audience, be it on Facebook and now on YouTube. How did you manage to do that?
Just basically being respectful to everybody, even if it's not a piece that I didn't agree with, which there are some brands that I won't, I'm not going to knock somebody's personal choice because that's their personal choice. Some people like to get on, they like to be a snob and, talk down about a certain brand, whatever. I try not to do that. Like if I don't like the certain brand, I just won't, I won't say anything. I'll just like to post and scroll on through.
Well, that's my approach always, is I always tell my clients, buy what you like first and foremost, and to each his own, right? There's an ask for every seat, and I will state my opinion about pieces in regards to maybe perhaps their durability, functionality, resale value, things like all those things that people actually ask me. But I don't shy away from telling them, listen, personally, I'm not a fan because of this. However, this is a good watch. Just because I'm biased towards this watch and I don't like it, because majority of the I don't like it comes from physical appearance usually, right? Or size or something like that, something physical. And I always find myself, keeping myself in check to say, look, yes, I may not like this watch, but I will give any watch credit where credit is due, regardless of whether I like it or not. And that's a good approach. Let's talk about your channel, right? So you start this channel, you managed to collab with a lot of guys out in the watch space, you've done a lot of live feeds, and you've gotten a successful amount of people to actually dial in and listen to you talk to various people. Do you find yourself learning from the process of collabing with others? And at the same token, where does that fit in as far as the future of your channel?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I've gotten a lot of help from people like Bruce and people like Rob. They've been really influential in helping build the channel. They've helped me out. I'm at right now like 1,200 and something subscribers, which is pretty decent. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but they say the first 1,000 subscribers is the hardest.
Oh, I know.
So, and then through that, I feel like personally it's helped me build my knowledge base as well on watches. Like I'm not gonna claim to be a guru like some people do, but I'm no means an expert. You learn something new every day, which I'm sure you know. But I've been able to build my collection and see what I like and what I don't like. Like I was able to achieve a long time Grail of mine, which was the Zenith El Primero, the 38 millimeter, the blue dial. And I just found out that I'm not a chronograph guy. Nothing wrong with the watch. It's a gorgeous watch. It's just something that I didn't, and I don't look at that as a buying regret. I just look at that as like an experience. So that kind of helped build my knowledge base, build my experience on what I bought, like, don't like. As getting all kind of different pieces through the channel has able to help me acquire more knowledge that way as well.
Personally, Chris, I feel like there's got to be some sort of a goal at the end, right? So you mentioned to me that the future of your channel obviously is to grow your audience, right, and to continue educating as you are learning to pass that knowledge on to others. But I do see a future in that, and the future is, well, for one, to grow a channel, YouTube does pay you for views, right? Like we don't grow our channel for the views that we get. Our channel's main purpose, and I'm being flat out, as I've told my audiences before, is that I want my audience to tune in, to listen, and potentially become my clients, and they have over time. But I think that at some point, you got to sort of swing your channel to where you can start dabbling in the watch business just a little bit, just the same, because YouTube will give you that opportunity. Your audience will give you that opportunity. The years you've done moderating other boards will give you that opportunity. And the knowledge that you acquire is going to give you that opportunity. So outside of getting out there and learning the geeky stuff, the nuts and bolts and stuff like that, I think paying attention to the market and price trends, which you can fairly easily follow in a lot of these Facebook boards, wouldn't you agree? You see what things are going for on these boards, what dealers are asking, what private individuals are asking, what are the prices that are actually getting, and things of that nature. And I would suggest looking in that direction and saying, hey, maybe I can put together a show of once a month, sort of like what I do with Adrian, like a market update, right? Social media is becoming a humongous part of this thing we call the watch business. There's a lot of data there, and that data is not something you can harvest easily, right? I can tell you my website stats, I can tell you my eBay store stats, but it's very hard to harvest social media data and put it out there and say, hey guys, here's an update. In fact, as a watch dealer, I would love to have somebody like Chris once a month come out and say, hey guys, based on last month's research and what I've observed in the top watch boards in the world on Facebook, here's the data that I got. and based on that data, state your opinion. I think that's a good idea for sure. You may end up being either a huge resource or informational source to people and you can make money off of YouTube, right? But at the same token, I do see an opportunity to become a concierge because you know who the dealers are. You know who you can trust, whom you can't trust. You even know a lot of the private clientele that's out there. The biggest fear other clients have today is to buy from another private individual over social media platforms, right? So by tying those together, I think that could certainly be a hell of an idea for you. I'm going to ask you one last question. What are some of the watches you own now?
Currently, I actually just picked up my first Rolex, which is wearing it today, 1505 from my research, which is a vintage, of course, from the 70s. So I'm really liking that piece. Whether I'll keep it, I don't know, because I tend to pick that up from Rob as well. Like I tend to flip really easy, get in and out. That's how I like to experience different watches. Because of course I'm not made of money, so I can't just go out and buy every other. So I gotta tend to flip them. Other than that, I actually kind of consolidate the collection a lot. I have, of course, the typical G-Shock, the all metal, the full metal, the Timex Q, a couple Casios, the Seiko Orange Monster, and Spinnaker microbrand. But other than that, I really don't have a whole lot at the moment because I was at 20, 24, 25 watches at one point. And I was like, it's time to consolidate a little bit.
That makes sense. I mean, it sounds like you do have a fairly good knowledge, and we do sell quite a lot of, and I tend to call them lower priced brands. I don't like to call them micro. I don't like to call them cheaper. I don't like to label this because we're talking about things like Citizens, Movados, companies with huge names and things. Same goes for Certina, I think, which is a guy. So what I think I might do next time around is I might send up a bunch of watches your way, and I want to see your take on those brands because that's something that certainly my audience likes to see from time to time. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge and experience in the lower price brands because when I started this, yes, I started with $12,500, but I put that money into more expensive watches, for the lack of a better word. And I know you had some questions for me, so I'll be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, the first question is basically, you might have been asked this before. If you weren't running Luxury Bazaar, what do you think you would be doing?
It's very hard to imagine, right? I always ask myself a question, what if I didn't leave the corporate world? Where would I be today? I mean, I would like to think that I'd be somewhere higher up in some managing director position with a cushy job managing a whole lot of people. But if you want to go from a business perspective, one of my other passions is antique weapons, evolution of weapons and things of that nature. I have guns dating back to the 1600s, right? I literally have a gun that actually just came into the office today that was probably on one of the ships that Columbus came over in, or at least from that era. I highly doubt it was from that ship, right? So I'm very passionate about that. And then it's very easy to take a passion and turn it into a business, going back to the conversation me and you just had. So if I wasn't flipping watches, I'd probably flipping antique guns from a business perspective.
And then the next one was, as somebody, of course, you have all kind of different pieces across your desk every day. As somebody who can hold pretty much anything you want, is there a Grail watch out there now, or have you acquired all the watches that you want?
The ultimate Grail watch for me would be the Patek Philippe Sky Moon Tourbillon, their Grand Complication, which is a $2 million watch. I'm not in the position where I can afford to hold on to that watch. I'm in a position where I can buy that watch and sell it within my business, but I'm not in a position where I can make it. I think personally, and again, I'm never afraid to sound shallow, but that's the ultimate fuck you watch. That's the watch that you put a Sky Moon Tourbillon on your wrist, it's end of conversation, end of discussion. But at the same token, I will tell you there have been many Grails that have come across my desk. And I can sit here for 2 hours telling you, oh, I regret selling this, or I regret selling that. And it changes, and it changes just as the market changes, right? Because there was a watch that seemingly was a dog in the market that I may have sold off, a few years back, and now all of a sudden that watch has tripled or quadrupled the price. That biases you, right? All of a sudden, human nature will make me think, well, shit, I shouldn't have sold that watch, right? So now all of a sudden in my head, that becomes the Grail. But the one Grail that I would put on my wrist to sort of say, hey, this is it. When it comes to watches, it can't get any better than this, would be the Sky Moon Tourbillon from Patek Philippe, that Grand Complication.
I was going to ask you also, what are your thoughts on micro brands?
About a year and a half ago, a particular vendor I did business with overseas reached out to me that deals in a lot of these micro brands. And I decided that we're going to go into that business model, which is a completely separate business model that we sort of created here at LB, and I got to tell you, it's been a hell of a success. The margins are better, the turnover is better, but the downside is that if you want to get into this business seriously, you have to buy a lot. So, you know, when I purchased Movado watches, I purchased 11,000 Movado pieces, right, in order to get the price that I need. It takes up a lot of space in my office. In fact, my office turned into half warehouse at this point. I can give you my thought on these watches outside of the physical. And the reason for that is because I don't really get into the details or the nuts and bolts of these watches, because most of them, let's face it, they're not very complicated. Some of them have some in-house quartz movements, whatever it might be. Of course, you know, a lot of these brands some brands do stand out, you know, like Citizens with their eco technology, right? So there is certain things to look for when it comes to these micro brands, but some of the stuff is just blatantly affordable watches that look good, put together fairly quickly, and are able to be offered to the market at an affordable price, so that guys out there like you that are passionate about watches and not necessarily out there looking to buy an AP can still pick up a good-looking watch that's going to work at an affordable price. The only downside to those watches is, and I'm sure you know it as well, is the resale value. Majority of them won't have any resale value, because if you're buying a watch for $100, where's the resale value there? It's like buying a pair of shoes. You buy a good-looking pair of shoes, once you wear them out, they're done. You're not reselling them, so to speak. But how many people in the world today can afford a $20,000 AP versus a, I don't know, $100 Nixon watch or a Certina watch for a couple of $100s, right? And that's really the answer to your question. There's a lot more guys out there that love watches, that are passionate about watches, that want to buy themselves watches, but they can only afford watches that are, you know, up to $500, let's say. And this is why I like your approach in regards to what you're doing, because you're proving my point that I always try to make on my channel, is price is completely irrelevant. Your love of watches is a love of watches, and it should not be dependent on the dollar amount that you're putting on your wrist.
And then one thing I can say about having the channel is, like I had mentioned before, like had it not been for the channel, I wouldn't have gotten to hold a lot of the pieces that I've gotten to hold as well. Like my Grail watch is a Blancpain at 50 fathoms, the ceramic. And I got to hold that through an AD that I work with out of North Carolina. And then I actually had a viewer reach out to me and offer for me to look at his brand new Bulgari Octafinissimo. So like here at Myrtle Beach, that's where I'm based out of. There's not really many ADs. There's a Rolex AD. So otherwise, I would not have gotten the chance to look at, you know, all the different watches like that.
You'd be surprised what kind of doors would open up to you in regards to, A, I want to review this, or A, I want to review that. There's plenty of influencers, I guess is the buzzword, right? Guys that are on social media, guys that have basically an audience that listens to them and respects them. I get collabs offered to me every day, right? And I turn down most of them. And I told you, one of the reasons I wanted to do it with you, because I love the story behind it, because to me it's about the story, it's about the passion, and you represent that really well. But you're going to have a lot of doors that are going to open up to you. Once your audience grows, you'd be surprised how many guys out there will reach out to say, hey, listen, why don't you come out to my store and do a video, which is going to be the next thing I'm going to suggest is, you know, grab one of those things that I walk around with and get out on the road once this COVID dies down a little bit, because I think there'll be a lot of great opportunity for great content. The only thing I'll tell you is stay true to who you are. And if someone out there offers you a collab to review a particular watch, you just have to be honest and say, look, I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm going to give you an honest opinion. So if you're going to send me this watch, be prepared for me to say, well, you know what, the strap sucks. You know, you should do this and you should do that. And as long as you do that, I think your audience will appreciate that and your channel will continue growing.
I think that's pretty much all I was going to ask.
So Chris, first and foremost, thanks for taking the time and joining me on the show. I had a great conversation. I'm going to have Ian link all your channel below, guys out there. Show some love to the Watch Lounge and Chris. Show him not just some love by clicking the follow button or the subscribe button, right, and hitting the like button, but comment on his channel, because as you can tell, this is a very new journey for him. Yes, he seems to be somewhat seasoned already from his experience on Facebook, but YouTube is an entirely new thing for him. And I personally get a lot of motivation, and I often take a lot of good advice from you guys to help me grow my knowledge for one, and then grow my channel. So do the same thing for Chris. And Chris, I think the next thing what we'll do is I'll have Ian email you a list of some of those brands that we have, those, as you call them, micro brands. And I'd love to send you a package and get a review from you on that. Let's just see what your thoughts are, because you seem to be, I would have to guess, you're probably more knowledgeable in that aspect than I am, because I flat out know that I'm not. So I think your next kick-ass video could probably be that. If we send you a dozen of watches or so, and then maybe you can school me on some things via one of your videos, and I'll be the one on the other end watching next time around. Chris, thank you so much for coming out again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you later. Well, guys, that was Chris. That was Chris with his wonderful story. I think now you guys realize why I decided to bring this guy on. He has a hell of a story to tell. Once again, show him some love. I'm going to link his YouTube channel below. And let me know what you think of this video. Comment below. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the share button, all those wonderful things that you do to help my channel grow. And I'll see you guys next week for more watch reviews and other videos.